Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Office Pro TV. I'm your host, Justin Dennison, and it looks like you've made it back in time in order to see our Excel's 2016 Essentials series. And we're talking about number formats. Particularly, we're talking about dates and times. If you haven't watched the previous episode, go see the nice little foreshadowing that I left there. And, well, luckily, we have someone who can bend space-time with her will to tell us all about them. Ms. Vaughn Smith. How you doing today, Vaughn?
Well, I didn't know I had that special power.
I might have overpromised on that one a little bit, but we'll go with it this time, right? So dates and times, it seems pretty simple, but I know from my experience, they're not always as simple as they first appear to be.
No, they are not. And there's so many different ways to do dates. It's kind of scary a little bit. And then where, you go down the rabbit hole of all the different ways of going ahead and displaying dates, it can be a little scary. So I'd like to start there, actually, with a little bit of trivia knowledge, or I don't know about trivia, but let's go to our computer and see what we got down in here. I've got a couple websites pulled up, and of course, you can't not go to Wikipedia. You can't not. I think it's a double negative somewhere in there. I think it is.
But I think it's allowed if you can't not do something, right? It's not like. I think that's an acceptable double negative in that context.
Okay,
it's not like I'm saying I'm not hardly hoping not to or something like that. It's not something like that. I can't not go to.
Good.
So.
I like it, and I use it a lot. So yes, we have date and time notation in the United States, and we pretty much different from any other English-speaking country. So it's like we're just different. We always need to be just because. And you can see that if I was going to say what is today, Justin, what would you say?
I would say 3/14/18 or 3/14/2018, or sometimes I have seen padded with zeros. I tend to go with the less ambiguous approach, like 4 years, but that's based on my background and things that I've done.
Yeah, and it's March 14th, 2018. Like we say the month, then the day, then the year, right? But we could say it's the 14th of March in the year of 2018. I mean, that's totally valid too. And we usually use a 12-hour clock notation. There's the military time, which I have to sit there and add on my fingers or subtract every time because it's just they're like, it's so easy. I'm like, yeah, if you get used to it, and that's fine. But there's just different ways that you can go ahead and designate the years and all about is there a slash, is there a hyphen, is there a period? Which one is it going to be? And then it also talks about that we do usually spoken with the year as a cardinal number and the day as an ordinal number. So do you know the difference between cardinal and ordinal, Justin?
Ordinal is for ordering, like the first, the second, the third, and cardinal is like how we typically say numbers, like, oh, that's 2009 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so what I think they say here, quantity. Yes. And it's funny because ordinals are actually something within fonts, like in font sets, and how it's actually represented, how they do the superscript of those particular characters. It's kind of fun. And when I love to talk about it, I'm like, yeah, because you have things in your font sets like swashes and ordinals, and people go, what? And I'm like, oh, it's fun. And glyphs. Oh, God, I love a glyph. So anyways, we got those different things. And I did think it was kind of fun to talk about, all the different countries and what type of things and how we're right over here in the big old fuchsia, but Canada's hanging out there by itself too. So, just a little bit of fun, poking fun at ourselves is like we just have to do everything just a little bit different, okay? So you're going to have to pick what do you want your dates to look like in Excel, and then we can format accordingly. Okay, so why don't we come down into Excel. We have talked about the general number format, and let me go over here to my home tab so I can bring back up the number formats here, is that if I type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's just a regular number, but if I type in 3-14-18, it will turn itself into a number. The 2/2/2, February 2nd, all those different things is going to automatically, going back up to cell, flip it into a date. And it does format the same way, doesn't it? Again, if I typed in 12-12-12, notice it does turn it into a 4-digit year. But you can have a 2-digit year as well, and you could have it to where the 0 is in front of the 3, a 0 in front of the 2. There's different ways that you could go ahead and write it. Okay, so down here, notice that I have already formatted in the day, month, year. That's different, isn't it? So if I typed in 3-14-18, well, it flipped it. It's actually the 14th of March, 2018, because it's already formatted that way. So if I typed in, let's say 12-2-18, okay, well then, oh, I was actually trying to do the 12th day of February. But what did it do? It flipped it. Ooh, that could be confusing too. Ooh, see, you got to be careful on these, all right? Especially since there's a whole set of numbers between 1 and 12 that could represent both the day and the month. Ooh, which one is which? So.
Now, does this same flipping apply if we use slashes when we're typing in here instead of dashes?
Okay, so I was trying to do 2/12/18. That's, oh, look at that. Okay, so 2-12-18. Okay, did I flip it? I was trying to do the
you must have flipped it originally.
I think
you must
I
have did 12 too.
12
that actually illustrates a point.
Oh.
Right? That illustrates a point that, wait a minute, I'm trying to like noodle these around in my head so as I'm typing them that they automatically get flipped and formatted for me. It can be problematic because of, well, we're taught since we're young, you write the date these ways.
Yes.
And you'd write the time these ways. And then if you have to reformat them, it takes a little bit of cognitive complexity. Follow-up question about this, can I do decimals? Because I've actually seen, and I think the Wikipedia article actually says this, like 1.1.18.
Let's try it. Let's select this. And talk about cognitive complexity. You can see I don't have much. Just looks at it and says, I don't understand that. So the dot is not like a representative of the pattern it's going to recognize for dates. So
and which is odd because in the United States, there are times where dates are represented with dots as the delimiting character. It only recognizes slashes and dashes. There's probably a couple of other ones there. But if you're within the United States and you're like, we use dots, well, Excel's going to go, that's cool. I have no idea what you're talking about.
And it also seems to be like the more cool way to represent dates of like, ooh, so at least that's what I see, like advertising and everything like that. But yes, all of these can get very, very confusing. So just be careful as to, and again, this goes back to, you got to know how you want to enter your dates in, and do you go by the day, month, year, or do you do the month, day, year? It kind of depends on what side of the globe you're living on to make sure that you are consistent. But nowadays with global companies, I mean, that also becomes like more of a company policy. What way is your company going to adhere to rather than just you by yourself? So knowing all of that is very important. Okay, so let's move down to, we know that this gets a little confusing. Let's talk about our text, right? So if I typed in 3-14-18, we already know that that's just going to stay 2/2/2, or 02, keeps it that way. We could do 1.1.18, keeps it that way. Just sees it as text, and it would never be a number. I'm going to delete this one and go back to some more of those ones that I was trying to remember how I did it. Okay, so if I zoom out a little bit, I'm just going to take out the zoom. So here, if I took this and I selected all of this and said, hey, let's go ahead and make this all a short date, notice that a lot of them will change, but these down here didn't change, did it? Okay, they're never gonna get out of being text. You got to be very, very careful about that. It's weird. I'll show you a workaround in just a second, but do know that. So now if I change this to a date, the one thing that I didn't do was show you what if I typed in the number 5. It's just a number, right? Whew, that's January 5th, 1900. Huh? Okay, and even here, if I typed in 100, that's April 9th of 1900. What's going on here, Justin? You know the answer.
Yeah, but humor me here. Type in 364 in one of those, and it should be okay. Type in 366. Type in 367. Oh, 1900 is a leap year. I forgot. Yeah, so it starts counting at 1. What happens if you put 0 in?
Ooh.
Ooh, that is a non-existent date.
Yes.
But that's important to know. It'll start at a non-existing date. And also, just a quick aside, if you scroll down a little bit, that 1.1.18, it doesn't give you an error.
No.
It doesn't recognize that as a number, so it can't do a conversion to a date, and that kind of explains our previous behavior.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's weird.
Oh, yeah. And it's formatted as text.
Yep.
So, and just because you did this to me in the last one, I thought was really interesting because I'd never done this. Because what if I typed in -1? Ooh. And then I think, oh, it's just too big to display. And then nope, it won't. You could make this column as wide as you want. It'll never give you that number because in Excel land, nothing existed before 1900. And so that's where you just said, oh, it's a leap year. Let's do this. Let's come over here. Let's come over to like a blank area because why is it doing that? Yes, all of these dates that you have, they're numbers. Like, but it's not a number, but it is. The computer doesn't know what date it is, okay? It's a lookup table. It is some reference that says we're going to start counting at 1. 1 being January 1st, 1900. 2, 3, 4, and then we keep on going. So that's what it's doing. I just realized I don't know why I went over to a blank area because then I can come back over to here and say, hey, why don't we do this? Sorry, I was trying to make this column right. Why don't we take these and show you what their numbers are? If you take a date and convert it to a number, that's what it is. That's all you've got going on here is a number in the background that Excel is thinking and mapping to what date it is. And that's where it starts. And we have this whole like counting from 0, like this is where it's going to start, or 1, I guess, really, because 0 we saw was not existent. And that's how it's going to go ahead, and it can't go the other way.
I think it's funny that it doesn't allow you to do negative numbers. It just kind of breaks. But it says, 0 is 10/1900 as a date, which is still non-existent. And it just kind of cracks me up that it's like, no. 10/1900 is the beginning of all time. That's not real. Now, Vaughn said it's a lookup table, and some of you are like, hold on, the date's the date. Actually, all dates that we use are based on some kind of previous event. They said this point in time is the beginning, and we're going to count forward. In the case of Excel, it's January 1st, or January 0, 1900, and it says every day after that is a respective date. And that's how it does it. It allows you to create mathematical relationships between some former reference time and now, and which means, technically, it's backed by a number. All the dates you talk about are exactly the same thing.
Sorry, I'm over here kind of internally cracking up because for my college graduation speech, the guy, it was so, but that was a whole other thing. Anyways, that is something to keep in mind because if I came into here, it is formatted as a date, and I typed in a whole bunch of numbers. Well, guess what? That is what. Oh, did I pick a number that? Oh, it was too far. Okay, I was trying to do something like that. Come on, give me something. Okay, There. Okay, I was trying to get it to the year 2809. I guess I went a little too far that way too. So I guess it doesn't have it. It has the other way too.
It's odd that it has an upper bound, because right now, if you have a beginning and you're like, oh, you just count the number of days, it should just be able to calculate it and be done.
Yeah. Oh well. Hey, we broke it.
Yay!
Good job. All right, so just understand that the date or the number underlying it is something to be careful of. And if you have cells that are pre-formatted as a date, to know why it's doing that. And I'm going to undo a couple times so I can get this back into some of the dates. Because if it's a date as a date, then I could come into the different options in the number formatting to be like, well, do I want the long date? Do I want the short date? Do I want to have the 2-digit year with a 0? Do I want to change it into the day and the month? Do I want to type it out? Do I want to have the time with it? We'll get into time too. But if I click this one, okay, well then there it's going to go ahead and write out the month rather than putting in the numbers and so on and so forth. And I keep on clicking that. If you go down into, well, I want to have it with the time. Did we ever enter any time in any of those cells, Justin?
We did not, and we were counting by days, and that based on my experience, it makes sense. Start at 12 a.m. That is the beginning of the day.
Yeah. So if you didn't type it in to begin with, going back to that, what did I input and everything, that could be a little weird. Okay, we'll come back around to that. But the text thing. Okay, this happened to actually one of my coworkers, and she got some information and she kept saying like, I don't understand why I can't format this today. And I'm like, oh no, just go up to the number formats and change this and do all of that. I'm like, it would not work. She was doing these sorting. She's like, see, it's not changing. And I'm like, huh. It took me a while, and I'm like, oh, and I realized, yep, you've got a problem. It's text. Can't ever bring it. But this is not a series that talks about functions, but I have to do this because I just feel like you need to know about this. There is a function called the date value. Okay? And right here, you can see that these cells are formatted as text. We know we can't change it into a date because it will never let us change it into a date. But the function of date value, I'm saying perform the date value on this particular cell, it ends up with a number. Well, we learned that numbers are dates. So I took this and I asked to do a function on these cells. I then took this information, I copied it, came over to here, and I pasted it as just the values. Because if I just did a regular paste and it's trying to paste the function and then it does this reference and you don't want to do that, then you're actually doing circular reference. Don't worry about it. So you just go ahead and choose values. And as values, then I can just take these numbers and turn them into dates. And that's exactly, and so it works. That's what I chose the long date format instead of the short date format. So it can be done. It worked great in my example. Test it, be careful. It should work, but I am always a little wary about some of this stuff, especially if you have a lot of data, but it can be done. So I just thought that was kind of neat to be able, you can convert it in a roundabout way. Time. What is time? It's, in Excel, it can be a little weird because these are all like valid ways that we would represent time in normal land, right? 5 p.m., 3:30 a.m. This is 2:21 p.m. This is military time, right? I mean, these are all different ways that you can type it in. But it goes back to that whole pattern. If I want to say, hey, let's go ahead and take all of these and let's format it as time, only one of them changed, didn't it? Like, why did it do that? Because it doesn't see this as time, just kind of like it just sees it as text. It didn't follow the right pattern or the kind of underlying information to know that I can format it as time. These are already formatted as time. When I scroll over, see these right there, they're time. So if I take this and say, all right, well, let's go ahead and change these cells in be able to follow a pattern on that one. It gets a little weird.
Do have a question. So 5 p.m. We selected all those, and only one changed in order to affect having the time pattern. But if we click on the 5 p.m., does that actually show it the column over the original one?
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah. So that shows time. If we now change that to something else, like a number, right? Does that, okay. But that's something that I was like, hold on. It's keeping that as a time format, so that cell is formatted as time, so if I then re-enter something else that actually falls, then it will update, right?
Let's see. So if I said, let's do time, right? It's now, so I'm going to type over this cell, right? So when I type in 5 p.m. No. But if I typed in 5:25, then it goes ahead. But do you notice how I had to type in like the colon? I had to, and it just went to AM. What if that was PM? So if I came back in and said 3:23 space PM, then it does it. So you still have to type in a lot of it to make it realize that you're typing in time and not just text. And it's the same thing back on like this date that's formatted as text. I can come into here and say, you know what, you go ahead and be time. It doesn't matter, it's still text. Now you be a date. No, or percentage. No, it's not. So it's like that data still kind of holds on and it won't go away.
I do have a follow-up question about that AM PM thing because that bugs me. Even though we may be the only people who use AM PM, that's a weird thing. What if I go to that same cell and I type 15:23 without AM PM? What do I get? What do I see?
So this cell, the one that we were working on before. So 15:23. Mm-hmm. Nothing else.
Nothing else. Okay. So if you do know military time or 24-hour clock, then well, you can get around the AM PM. You still have to type that colon though. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a way around that?
Not that I know of. I mean, that's like the only indication to be time. Now, I guess you could do your custom number formats in the sense of like, I know this column is going to be time. I'm representing time, but I want to be able to type in 11:11:12 and just put in the colon in between it. But then I'd still have to, now the AM PM, that's a whole other thing too. So maybe just go straight to military time and then don't worry about it. But then if you're not really thinking in military time or measuring, this is one of the weird ones. Okay, you have to just follow the rules of what it wants you to be for time.
Now, we're in number formats. We have 11:12 p.m. there. What if I now change that back to a number? What does that look like?
So I will take this back to a number.
0.97. I bet that's in reference to a day. 11:12 is 0.97 of a day.
Oh, yes, it is.
So what if we put 1 p.m.? It should be roughly the same. 0.54, so it's 0.54 of a day.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Because I know that our dates are backed up by numbers, so I was like, oh, well, what about time? Because we've kind of just said, well, dates, don't worry about that. I'm just looking at right now, right? Mm-hmm. So that gives you a number representative of how long in the day it is.
So this right here, if we were talking about this, if we went ahead and represented this as a number, okay, but if I change this decimal to, if I say 0.54, right, and that's just a number, but now we turn this back to our date format, right? If we go back to the date that I really want it to be the date and the time, which would be right here.
But I noticed something there. We put 0.54. The 0.54 over there was 1 something. That one over there is 12 something.
But look at the number up there.
Oh, we're getting decimal play. We got to be careful there. Tricky. Which actually makes me think, if I'm typing in a date, can I also type in times even if I do not necessarily want to show those up? Okay. Like that. Let's just change it to the short date format.
Mm-hmm. So we'll take these. I'm going to delete these just so it doesn't like get ourselves confused.
Well, we thought we were going to delete them.
There we go. Okay, let's take these guys here. We will delete that, and we will select these, and we will make it a short date format.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Now, if we come to the top one, let's say 12/29/1900, and then, I don't know, 14, like a space.
So 12-29 dash, we'll just go 85 or
Okay.
86 for now.
Space.
Space.
And then like 14/22.
14:22.
All right. So we see that it's 12/29/1986. All right. But up in the formula bar, we get to preserve that time information. So now if we come back and change it to the date time, we should still have that, right?
Yes. And that's where it's remembering the raw data that we typed in. So it's remembering it, and it's because we told it in the original, the short date format, don't include the time. But I did type it in as it likes the way the time goes with date and time, because date and time are really almost like the same thing, if you want to say, in this situation. So yeah, if I go to here and then scroll down to the one, go down to the one that I want the time with it, it will bring it up.
Now, if we change this one to number because we turned it into time, we should see a fractional number now, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I would even make a stronger assertion, Vaughn. I would argue that date and time are exactly the same entity. We just have two different ways of representing larger scales, right? So like hours of a day, okay, we have some way to represent that. But then if I'm talking about since 1900, I need some way to give a different scale to that. So for me, based on my experience, I always consider date and time like together. Like what day is it and what time did it happen?
Yeah, and this starts getting into the metaphysical world and like, what is time? What is it? And then you start to really think about it, and then it makes you kind of go a little loopy, and you go, okay, yes, blue. And you kind of get yourself out of that like thinking loop of the infinite and everything like that.
I have one final question.
Okay.
If we go to that date value function that we saw from the text.
Over
right?
here?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go change 3-12-99. Let's add something that looks like a time component, like a 1:, so up there, space 1:33. I don't know, it's like 1:33 in the morning. So we go there. Did that change that?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay.
I mean, because this is still the formula. So I mean, technically, if I changed, well, if I typed in 2-2-02, see that one changed, but it doesn't seem to like the time after it. In this, and it could be like the way the function. I mean, the function is saying a date function, date value. So I mean, I don't know if there's a time value. I don't know if there's a date and time. This is going a little bit past what you got me, Justin. You finally got me.
Well, I actually kind of anticipate this makes sense because it says date value, right? Well, it doesn't say I'm going to give you the time associated with that date, like how far into that particular day. So it's fine. It wasn't out to get you. I was just like, oh, let me break it. Hold on. Because these are all kind of like data manipulations that you would do like if you get raw data from somewhere else, right? So knowing these kind of edge cases is very important to not be frustrated when you're trying to make transformations.
And while you were talking, if you want to just jump down my screen in case y'all are, when we were talking, remember the whole like representing it with the and what we need to make sure that we type in the right delimiters, the placeholders, all this stuff does make a difference. And while we're giving you all sorts of wonderful scenarios, and I'm sure you've all run into lots of scenarios, none of them are always the same. Okay, and that's where you got to be very, very careful. And that's why I said like this thing, do it on a small set. You don't want to like do 50,000 rows and it's still wrong. This is the problem with data, period. You know, it's just, it's hard to trust it sometimes, and just letting our computers just do what it's going to do. You still need to have a little bit of a human component, but we're getting into that metaphysical area where it's like, we need to go. We need to back up.
Well, Vaughn, I can definitely see that we need to go before we dive too deep into the weeds. You know, we're about right here. I'm starting to have a hard time breathing, but you're absolutely correct. Data is dirty, and it needs a little bit of human touch to clean it up. So do keep these in mind as you're kind of manipulating dates and numbers. And I think this actually concludes our mini-series on various number formats. We dove deep into a few of those, and that's to help you not be frustrated and become more productive. So definitely come on back. We got more coming at you, but for now, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Signing off for Office Pro TV, I've been your host, Justin Dennison.
And I'm Vaughn Smith.
And we'll see you next time.